Before accompanying him to the White House, European leaders reiterated the need for a united front ahead of a meeting between Trump and Zelensky. Dozens were arrested in Israel during protests demanding the Israeli government strike a deal for the release of hostages in Gaza.
Early results showed Bolivia's centrist candidate Rodrigo Paz secured a surprise lead in Sunday's presidential election. Air Canada said it suspended plans to restart operations after the union representing flight attendants defied a return-to-work order.
Before accompanying him to the White House, European leaders reiterated the need for a united front ahead of a landmark meeting between US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Addressing journalists on the eve of the summit, French President Emmanuel Macron said showing weakness today in front of Russia would lay the ground for future conflicts.
Bonsoir, il ne peut pas y avoir de discussion territoriale concernant l'Ukraine sans les responsables légitimes démocratiquement élus de l'Ukraine. Pas de discussion sur l'Ukraine sans les Ukrainiens. Mais de la même manière, pas de discussion sur la sécurité des Européens sans eux.
Other European leaders, including Finnish President Alexander Stubb, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and Czech Prime Minister Peter Fiala also stressed the need for clear security guarantees for Ukraine. 38 people were arrested in Israel during nationwide protests, where demonstrators demanded their government strike a deal for the release of hostages in Gaza. Protesters gathered at dozens of points across Israel, including outside politicians' homes, military headquarters, and on major highways. Police used water cannons to disperse them as they blocked the roads. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has previously demanded the immediate release of hostages, but is balancing the threat of mutiny from within his coalition. Far-right members of his cabinet say they won't support any deal that allows Hamas to remain in power. Netanyahu said one of Israel's conditions for ending the war is what he described as Israel's security control over Gaza, something that has drawn international condemnation. Within the enclave, international aid continues to be airdropped, though humanitarian groups warn it is not enough. Hospitals in Gaza say at least 17 aid seekers were killed by Israeli forces on Sunday, including 9 waiting for aid trucks.
Bolivia's dark horse centrist candidate Rodrigo Paz secured a surprise lead in Sunday's presidential election, early results showed. With over 90% of the ballots counted, he received nearly 33% of the votes cast. In second place was right-wing former President Jorge Quiroga, who secured 26.4% of votes. The candidates are headed for a runoff, as 50% or 40% with a 10-point margin were needed for an outright victory. The results delivered a major blow to the Andean nation's movement towards socialism or MAS party after almost 20 years of dominance. The party's founder, charismatic ex-president Evo Morales, rose to power as part of the pink tide of leftist leaders that swept into office across Latin America during the commodities boom of the early 2000s. The elevation of the more moderate Paz apparently reflects Bolivian ambivalence about a wholesale political flip to a right-wing establishment. Paz has tried to distance himself from Morales' now shattered MAS party, which has failed to halt an economic tailspin. Air Canada said it suspended plans to restart operations after the union representing 10,000 flight attendants defied a return-to-work order. The strike, announced on Friday, was already affecting about 130,000 travelers around the world per day during the peak summer travel season.
Well, we've been trying to get through on the phone to Air Canada to try and rebook our flights, been looking online, there's nothing available, we can't get through on the phone. And so I just decided to come down here to the airport to see if I could talk to an agent and get something booked.
I'm trying to get back home to London. Hopefully I'm going to get back, but we'll see, I guess.
Less than 12 hours after workers walked off the job, Canada's federal jobs minister ordered the flight attendants back to work. But union members say they will continue to refuse work until their demands are heard, calling the return to work order unconstitutional. Air Canada has been in contract talks with the union for about 8 months, but they have yet to reach a tentative deal. The Canadian government maintains it is not anti-union, saying it is clear the two sides are at an impasse.
I love you.
A big reason that Dave and I wanted to do this film is that we knew that our shared history as a couple would be infused into the characters, and it certainly helped. You know, it actually made it so that we really didn't have to do a lot of prep work in terms of that relationship. I mean, our relationship is very different from the couple in the movie, but in terms of just having that history that an audience can feel, all of that stuff is already there.
And there are very intimate scenes in this movie. We are doing stuff in this movie that we've never done in real life. And so it would have been weird to do it with anyone that wasn't my wife.
During the shooting of this movie, we had sex for the first time.
We've
been together 13 years.
13 and a half years.
Honor to witness.
Thank you. Thank you. It felt like a really special day.
My ambition for the redevelopment from the start was to try and recreate spaces as they might have appeared when Henry I visited Norwich Castle in 1121 as accurately as possible. So with the best academic evidence for objects, for decorations using archaeology, and manuscript evidence, architectural evidence, any evidence that we could get that was directly informing us about what materials were like in the early 12th century.
When we talk about a planetary parade as something you can see in the sky, it's that the planets appear in a roughly line-like position across the sky.
Mercury just kind of crawls away from the sun for a few nights, and we can see it right after sunset or right before sunrise. Then it goes and hides behind the sun again as it goes around the sun. That's why it's a tricky planet to observe, but it's there.